With just 11 days before voters head to the polls for the midterms, we're taking a closer look at election security in our series, Issues That Matter. Earlier this year, Congress approved $380 million to help safeguard voting systems against cyber attacks. The threats of hacking and continued foreign interference continue to be major concerns. Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia is a leading voice on election security. He is the vice chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We've learned that the U.S. Cyber Command just recently launched an operation to combat Russian interference in our elections and this spreading of misinformation that they're involved in. How effective do you think that operation will be?
Well, Norah, I want to get to election security, but I want to first express some level of relief at this point that so far this act of terror, these bombs being sent around the country, have not caused any harm, personal harm yet. I've been very concerned about the president's tone, not being willing to call out and call up, for that matter, the two former presidents who were going to be victims of this kind of attack. And one of the things about this president is I don't think he understands that words matter. I mean, I was governor of Virginia when we had the sniper incidents years ago, and how leaders respond in these moments of crisis in reassuring the public and trying to bring us together, clearly not the way that
Because you're on the Intelligence Committee, you get a lot of briefing. Are you convinced that they will find this culprit who sent the
I believe we will find this culprit, but I think in a time when our political debate has gotten so rough, and frankly, when the president at times calls out and impugns the integrity of the FBI, impugns the integrity of the Justice Department, I believe in many ways he basically, this is an assault on rule of law, and that brings us to the election security piece.
But before you move on to that, a lot of people feel the way you do, Senator, that words matter. Why don't a group of you all get together and just confront him and say, you know, Mr. President, this is not helping. You've got to stop it. So many people come on this program and say exactly what you're saying. This is wrong. This is bad. Oh, what are we going to do? It's very tit for tat. But I know there are people that feel, a lot of people that feel the way you do in very powerful positions. Why don't a group of you just confront him and say, stop it?
Well, I think, as we've seen from his tweets overnight, Donald Trump thinks all of this is simply about him. And what I have hoped along the way would be that the next outrage would finally make many of my Republican colleagues step up. Now, privately, they have expressed these concerns. This may be the moment, but because, again, we've got 10 pipe bombs, an act of terror, and yet the president is out instead blaming the media as opposed to supporting the FBI to make sure we find this culprit.
So back to the
election security.
Election security. What is the U.S. Cyber Command doing to combat what is the spread of false information by foreign governments?
Well, let's break that into two categories. First of all, we do know that the Russians in 2016 massively intervened in our elections.
In 21 states?
More than 21 states. Misinformation, cyber attacks, and that's bipartisan. All come out of our Senate Intelligence Committee. And in a normal world, because of our elections that are spread between federal, state, and local, a normal White House would have appointed someone in charge of election security to coordinate these kind of activities, to push back. Instead, this White House not only didn't appoint anybody on election security, but they actually eliminated the cybersecurity position at the White House. Now, Department of Homeland Security.
I know you're leveling attacks against him. I spoke with the director of the FBI. The FBI is looking into this. What I'm asking you is, based on what you know, what are we doing to push back against this influence?
Let me finish, because the FBI and the DHS
is working hard on this.
They're working very hard, but what they have not had is a level of coordination across government. So we have improved security in almost all of the polling positions. But there's three areas that we're vulnerable. One, the voter files, where your names go to make sure that when you show up at your precinct, you're in the right precinct. There are three companies that control 95% of all our voter files. They have not had independent audits or independent review. At the voter stations where you actually vote, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has improved security, but because we've not been able to pass bipartisan election security legislation, we put money out there, but what we haven't done is make sure that every state has a paper trail to be able to audit after the fact in case those systems were broken into. That's crazy in my mind. In Virginia, I made sure we updated all our machines. And the third area is where you tabulate the votes. I think in terms of voter security at the polling station and the tabulation, we've gotten better. I have huge concerns about the issue of these 3 companies that control the voter files, people showing up and being told you're not at the right polling station. But what we need, and there was bipartisan legislation led by actually Senator Lankford from Oklahoma, we need to make sure that you have those paper trails and there is an audit system in place.
Senator, as a ranking member on the Intel Committee, we got to ask you about the New York Times report that the president is using his iPhone, it's unsecured, and that the Russians and Chinese are listening to that. Do you have any evidence that's actually taking place? John,
I've not got direct evidence, and I'm going to be getting an update on that shortly. But what I do know is this, if true, in a world where cybersecurity is one of our key areas where we are vulnerable, I believe, still as a nation, this would be one more example of where the president basically is kind of ignoring the overall advice the intelligence community.
Who's going to be giving you that briefing?
I'll get that briefing later today.
From?
Part of my job in national security to make sure I get these briefings, but not necessarily share all the information.
All right.
We don't mind you sharing.
I understand.
Senator, very good to have you here today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.